This spring we've had cool temperatures, heavy rains, and long stretches where nothing went quite as planned. But the seeds still went in, the beds still got planted, and the garden is quickly coming to life. For me, growing, cooking, and preserving food isn't just a hobby, it's how I stay grounded, even when everything else feels uncertain. And for the last few years, I've been growing a large variety of crops to see what works, what doesn't, and how to maximize my space to grow enough food for a year. Now, I'm still a long way from that, but every growing season I get closer, and I'm always learning. It gives me great comfort and a sense of control to know that I can grow a large portion of my food right here. I know what went into each plant, I know the soil, I know how it was grown, when it was harvested, and exactly how I preserved it. I always like to have lots of flowers in the garden. They're not just pretty, they help to attract pollinators and beneficial predatory insects. I grow calendula and sometimes chamomile in these beds. I collect the flowers for skincare, salves, and soaps. They self-seed, but I also collect seeds to give to friends. And this year I thought I'd grow fennel here. They bolted before forming the bulbs, which I love to eat. Let's go over here and take a look at the blueberries. Blueberries are one of the most nutrient-dense crops and can be eaten fresh, made into jams and sauces, and even frozen. I've tried growing them in the ground, which has failed multiple times due to our alkaline soil. They prefer acidic soil. So this year I'm trying them in grow bags with a targeted low pH soil mix, pine bark, and an acid-based fertilizer. And so far they're thriving. And I'm not sure where their final destination will be in a couple years, but this does buy me some time. Now, I always plant lots of tomatoes. They're at the core of our pantry in sauces, salsas, dehydrated slices, and even sun-dried tomatoes that I made last year. Using my own saved seeds from heirloom varieties, I started the tomatoes in the greenhouse, first in cell packs, then potted up for a bit before planting them deeply in the garden, because planting deeply improves root development along the stem. I'm growing indeterminate paste tomatoes in this bed, primarily for sauces. I'm also growing indeterminate slicers over here, and both of them are on A-frames for support. I've had good luck with these supports for vining types in the past. I interplanted them with basil to help repel pests and nasturtiums as a trap crop to attract aphids, which have been brutal the last couple of years. Fortunately, the other day I noticed hoverflies ovipositing eggs on these leaves. Hoverflies are natural aphid predators, and their larvae can consume dozens a day, while adults do feed on nectar and pollen, supporting our pollination. Sorry if you can hear my neighbor mowing there. In years past, I would always plant crops like beans and corn and squash directly in the garden. That's what's always recommended, but I would often lose half my seedlings between the weather, slugs, roly-polies, and such. The last few years, I've been starting all these crops from seed in the greenhouse. Planting well-established seedlings has been a game changer and greatly increased my success. Now, I'm growing all sorts of legumes this year because they can be dried and stored for a long time. I'm trying to learn more about growing different varieties, the ones I like and are most beneficial to my goals. Legumes are a great source of protein, and they also fix nitrogen and help rebuild the soil before other crops go in. And what would a garden be without cucumbers for fermenting and pickling? And so I've got cucumbers growing along the back trellis here. I always struggle with squash beetles, so I interplanted with French marigolds, which are thought to help repel some pests. They have quite a strong fragrance. I'm also planning to sow a second crop of cucumbers. I recently saw another channel recommend that, and it's a really smart idea. I also have the same intercropping trellis on both of these legume beds, except this bed over here has chickpeas in it. These chickpeas will also help fix nitrogen and build the soil, and they'll give us protein-rich meals year-round. Originally, I had spotty germination in cell packs, and so I had to pre-sprout some chickpeas by soaking them for a few hours, storing them in a container with a wet paper towel, or you can use a baggie. This is another method I think I will make part of my routine to save time and trouble. So this bed is part of my rotation system. I've got chickpeas here and garlic over here. When the garlic comes out here pretty soon, I'm going to start another bed of legumes. And when the chickpeas and black beans are done later this year, I'll plant garlic in these two beds. This bed actually has a variety of crops in it. I had originally intended to plant the whole bed in buckwheat my first time growing it, mostly because pollinators really like it, especially the hoverflies, which is a great predatory insect. So I did a germination test on this store-bought buckwheat that I always eat, and it looked really good. And so I direct sowed them, as it would be too many to start in cell packs. But I didn't think about the birds. So I decided to move any remaining buckwheat seedlings to the center of the bed and add tomato plants on the north side and pepper plants on the south side so they wouldn't get shaded out by the tomatoes. I had plenty of extra plants, so this worked out well. Turns out the flowers are beautiful and attract pollinators. Both my husband and I love green beans. I had meant for this to be a row of bush beans, but I must have used the wrong seeds and we ended up with pole beans, but no worries. I just added my go-to impromptu trellis made of fencing, which I have plenty lying around. Green beans can be frozen, but we do prefer them fresh. I'm planning to grow some in the greenhouse this winter to see if they work well. Buying fresh beans in the off-season is always a crapshoot. Now, in the other half of this bed, I have sweet potato slips growing. And let me tell you about my sweet potatoes. This was the first year I used a tote with potting mix in which to place the sweet potatoes, and I started them in the hot greenhouse, and they took off like you would not believe. This is only the first of 3 beds filled. Thankfully, sweet potatoes can store for more than a year if cured properly. The ones that I started were almost 2 years old, so I will likely not even have to plant these next year, and I'm already researching new recipes to try. Sweet potatoes are one of our staple crops, high in calories, easy to store, and they love the heat. Just grabbing strawberries where I can. The strawberry crop was really not that good this year because of all the cool, wet weather. Now, potatoes are another anchor crop for us. My husband absolutely loves our potatoes, and a row of potatoes in grow bags can go a long way. I made sure to chit them until they had good, strong sprouts, and it paid off because they have done really well. I switched to growing them in bags using leaf mold and compost instead of potting mix several years ago because they seem to do better than my heavy clay soil. And they're just now starting to die back, so I'll be harvesting them soon, just in time for a big pot of green beans and potatoes, slow simmered in a savory stock. A summer favorite I've enjoyed since I was a wee tot, and it's a classic around here, served with a big juicy sliced tomato and buttery sweet corn. I can almost taste it now. Now in this bed, I have onions and peanuts. Onions are a long season crop, and I started the seeds in late winter in the greenhouse. The varieties I chose store very well once cured. I like to use them fresh, and I preserve them in a variety of ways. I dehydrate them and blend into herbal spice powders. I rely heavily on them in my canned sauces and salsas and cooking in general. I started seeds sown heavily in cell packs, and I initially thought I had low germination, and I wasn't patient enough, so I sowed even more. But it was just the slow germination. In other words, I have tucked onions into several beds, but this is helpful as their scent can help repel many unwanted pests. We eat a lot of peanuts and peanut butter, especially with my homemade black raspberry jam. I tried growing them unsuccessfully in the past, but it was a long time ago, so I wanted to try again. Peanuts are pretty interesting in the way they grow. After pollination, the peanut flowers form pegs that bend down and push into the soil to form pods. And same as the chickpeas, I had to end up pre-sprouting these too, hence my intent to make this a regular procedure for legumes. I originally used the recommended peat pots for these, but I used cell packs for the later sprouts and it worked just fine, so that's probably my method in the future. I'm also growing a few plants in the greenhouse so that I can watch them more closely and document the process better. And from sweet to hot, I use a lot of peppers. I have a whole row of peppers here in grow bags. I use them fresh, roasted, dried, and even smoked, and they thrive in the heat. All but a few of these peppers in grow bags were overwintered in the greenhouse, and I brought them out after a threat of frost was over. Though we did have to deal with lots of storms and flooding rains, they were almost a daily occurrence. I like growing hot peppers in bags, which keeps the soil warmer and well drained. And I also have sweet peppers in the greenhouse beds, so we'll take a look at those a little later. The intercropping method of corn, beans, and squash, commonly known as Three Sisters, has been studied and practiced for generations. Each plant plays a role. The corn provides a natural trellis, the beans fix nitrogen in the soil, and then the squash shades the ground to suppress weeds and retain moisture. I don't grow them in traditional mounds because I'm limited in space, so I've adapted the concept to fit my beds. In half the bed, I planted bicolor sweet corn, which matures in about 80 days, alongside Hopi blue corn, which takes 110 to 120 days to prevent cross-pollination. Hopi blue corn can be eaten fresh like sweet corn, or it can be dried into cornmeal. Around the perimeter of the bed, I planted Kentucky Wonder pole beans to climb up the corn, as well as some of these supports that I used for bird netting earlier. Although the bird netting is primarily for my chickens. So last year's garlic is doing quite well, and I experimented with the no-dig method for the first time. I have soft net garlic in this bed, which was shipped to me from a friend. And in this bed, I used a variety of hard net garlics from Epic Gardening. And last year, I had a Three Sisters planting in these 2 squares, and since legumes help fix nitrogen and the corn develops deep fibrous roots, I left all the roots in place to help regenerate the soil. So when it came time to plant, I simply set the garlic cloves on the soil surface, covered them with a thick layer of compost, and then mulched them with leaves in the fall. It was simple, low disturbance, and so far the results look promising. I'll be harvesting soon and I can't wait. Garlic is one of the few ingredients that finds its way into nearly every savory dish and ferment I make. So you might notice these two beds look a little different and very nice. We're in the middle of redoing the garden. You probably saw that the other beds are pretty dilapidated and fallen apart, and it's time to redo them. But between that rain this year, in fact, this is all sort of muddy and gushy right now. Between all of that rain this year, we haven't had a chance to get back into it, but we're going to start here real soon. This bed here has leeks. Leeks are another one of my favorites. They are cold, hardy, and versatile, eaten fresh in soups and dehydrated to put into spice blends. I started them early in cell packs in the greenhouse and gave them time to thicken all season. And of course, I started too many. These seeds were actually ones that I had saved over 5 years ago. So I thought the germination rate would be low, but not so much. Leeks are planted a little deeper than onions. And I also added a layer of compost to help blanch the stem after they put on some size. And they look absolutely amazing. And so in the rest of this bed, I sowed carrots twice, 2 successions. I also have beets down here. I have rainbow chard in several places. I also sowed some lettuce seeds, and down here we have radishes. So this is kind of like a little salad bed. Over here, I have a variety of herbs. You can see it's shaded right now. It's about 10:30, quarter to 11, and they stay shaded for a good part of the day till about noon or 1 when the sun starts to move over. And herbs tend to do well. Plants grown for their leaves, like the kale that you see here, oregano and thyme, tend to do better in shady areas versus plants that are flowering. You can see the dill here is really reaching for the sun. Dill is very susceptible to bolting in the heat. And so it's going to flower now, and that's good. I'm going to leave these here to flower. I'll collect the seeds. Dill, cilantro, parsley, all of those plants are host plants for swallowtail butterflies. And so I try to leave them as long as possible in the garden, even if they have bolted, because swallowtail butterflies are just such a treat to watch. Herbs are commonplace on my entire property and in my kitchen. Herbs pack a nutritional and flavorful punch in tidy little packages. They're pretty low maintenance, but they do best with regular pruning. This helps to prevent bolting, encourage bushier growth, and extend harvest. And they're incredibly versatile, whether used fresh, dried, or blended into herb salts and seasoning powders, which I just did recently. Many perennials like oregano and thyme stay usable well into winter. They're evergreen in some cases. Annuals like dill and cilantro, more delicate. And the asparagus is pretty much finished for the season. It has begun to bolt. And bolt simply means sending up a flower stalk for reproduction. Asparagus is one of my favorite perennial crops, low maintenance, reliable, and productive year after year. You really don't have to do too much other than adding a layer of compost or leaf mold. During peak, you have to harvest daily since the spears can grow incredibly fast. And I'll let these fronds grow out to photosynthesize and feed the crown. And I usually collect a bit of seed to re-sow into any bare spots. I just did that this spring when I was cleaning up the garden. Now, I enjoy a lot of asparagus dinners in spring, and one of my favorites is with wine cap mushrooms I grow here on the property. And we'll take a look at that mushroom bed a little later. And this bed has a hodgepodge of crops. I've got a ring of celery surrounded by another ring of onions with sunflowers in the center. Interplanted with the onions, I've sown some carrots over here and more lettuce on this side as well. Trying to maximize my area. These are all good partners using different growing spaces and resources. And recently I wrapped the celery bases with toilet paper tubes in an effort to blanch the stems, hoping to make them more tender. And in this small bed here, I have mullein growing, which is about to flower. So I will let the pollinators enjoy that. I can see a little hoverfly on this one right now. I'll just make sure to cut it down before it flowers. I do not want mullein all over the garden. And so in the empty spaces down below, I planted more pumpkins, the jack-o'-lantern variety. I've even got more lettuce sown all throughout here. I like to sow lettuce in areas where it'll get shaded by taller plants. That helps to prevent it from bolting in the heat. And of course, I have too many tomato plants as well because I can never seem to truly thin them and I have to transplant them up. And so I've got another whole row over here in grow bags, and they are shaded. That's why they're getting a little taller than you would normally suspect. But they're doing okay so far. I'm probably going to have to add some more support here soon. In this bed, I have brassicas. I have a row of broccoli in the center, and then I have a row of cabbages in the front, and the broccoli starting to head up. And with this heat, I'm afraid it's going to bolt as well. And so I'm probably going to harvest those even though they're a little bit small. And of course, I dotted in onions all around the perimeter as well. And I do have bird netting, insect netting over top. I haven't really seen too many cabbage whites this year, so I'm not sure what's going on or if they're just a little late to come out. But this netting does have small enough openings that it does help prevent the butterfly from laying eggs. Although where the plants grow towards the top and touch them, sometimes she can get a few eggs on there. In fact, I think one of the earlier butterflies got my cabbage plant. And this bed, I originally sowed radicchio, but of course I've lost several of them to bolting because of the heat. In the back of the garden there, I have some sunchokes. Their tubers are somewhat like a nutty potato, and they're pretty good. Just another staple crop to have around. I started the broccoli and cabbage in the greenhouse this year, but I think in the future I'll either start them indoors or bring supplemental lighting outside because they were a bit behind because I didn't allow for that light difference. Inside, I give them 15, 16 hours of light. I've opted to start Brussels sprouts and cauliflower for the fall garden. I've learned not to push those too early in the spring because they tend to bolt before the others when the weather swings. Over time, I've come to realize it's easier to work with the seasons rather than to fight them. And this bed holds comfrey, a plant whose taproot goes deep into the soil and pulls nutrients up. It's well loved by the pollinators. I use it to make a potent tea to use as a fertilizer. And because it's right next to the compost pile, it's easy to cut and drop. I trim it back before it goes to seed, but I'll let it flower first. I can usually get several cuttings throughout the season. It is a perennial. And finally, this last area here is where I typically keep seedlings that I haven't planted out yet. And please don't judge me. These are my winter sown seedlings that I have yet to pot up. And that's next on my list, so I'll be working on that really soon. And I filled up this little bed with sweet potato slips. And let's go take a look at the leaf mold and compost area. One of the most important steps I take when planting is adding a scoop of finished compost right into the hole. It gives each plant a strong start with nutrients right where the roots need them. Over time, I've learned that compost works best when paired with a good mulch, and leaf mold has become my go-to. I spread it thickly across the beds, both in the garden and the greenhouse, to hold moisture, regulate soil temperature, and keep weeds down. As it breaks down, it also feeds the soil biology, which supports long-term health and resilience in the garden. I have a video showing you how I make it and use it, and I'll link that here. Let's go take a look in the greenhouse. The greenhouse has been such a gift this season, especially with how wet and unpredictable the weather's been. I was able to start most of my seeds in here this year, but I'm still learning to work around the natural light conditions. I'm experimenting with a few different crops in here this year. On a whim, back in late winter, I took a handful of my favorite 15 bean soup mix and germinated them. When most of them sprouted, I thought, why not try growing them? In hindsight, I probably wouldn't dedicate this much prime greenhouse space to a long season crop, but it's been fascinating to watch the lentils and other legumes grow. I'm really looking forward to harvesting them and making a big pot of ham and bean soup from scratch. I also have a nice big jack-o'-lantern plant. Everything gets huge here in the greenhouse because the plastic actually filters the sun. In fact, I need to clean it. It's pretty dirty. Well, hi, buddy. What are you doing? Oh, Pinky Man's my little baby. We just found out he has lymphoma. So he's on steroids right now, but this is his last summer. All right, I'm almost done with this tour and then I'll spoil you, okay? I'm growing determinate paste tomatoes in here this year. The tomatoes did incredibly well in the greenhouse last season, but the indeterminate varieties took over and they created a dense jungle. They filled the rafters that you can see here. Now, on this side, I do have some loofahs. I'm growing some outside along the fence. I forgot to mention those. And then these here, and we'll see how they do growing up string and then up these. They won't get nearly as massive as the tomato plants. These paste types should stay more compact and manageable. At least I hope so. In the next bed, I have peppers and onions. The onions have just sprawled all over the place. It's a little crazy. I've planted mostly sweet peppers in here. Last year, the hot peppers grew huge and they were so productive that I'm hoping for the same boost with these colorful bells, which usually take their time maturing outdoors. On the other side of the greenhouse, I have a lemon tree that I started from seed. It's about 5 years old now and it still hasn't bloomed, so I'm hoping that soon. If not, I'm just going to get rid of it and buy one. I also have a few starts here given to me by a friend, and here are those 3 peanut plants that I mentioned. I plan to put them in the bed after the 15 bean experiment. And this here is my olive tree given to me by a friend. They have quite a few little olives on here, but my friend told me that these smaller ones may not continue to grow. But we'll see. It's always fun to learn something new. Either way, it's exciting to see these long shot crops adapting to the space. And here is the wine cap mushroom bed I was talking about. They're done for right now, but I was able to enjoy quite a few harvests. And the bees are doing really well this year. Pollination, lots of honey. I'll actually be harvesting honey in the next week or two, so keep an eye out for that. My strongest hive threw 3 swarms, one of which I was able to gift to a friend, and 2 wild swarms moved right into my spare equipment. Apparently, they found it cozy enough to call home. The prairie will be full of color and buzzing with activity soon. It's one of the most important parts of this whole system. It supports biodiversity, it stabilizes the soil, and brings in native pollinators that help everything else thrive. It's companion ecology on a larger scale. What grows out here helps keep the garden and orchard in balance. So we like to plant trees and shrubs in little cutouts. We like to mow around them for walking and harvesting, but also to serve as fire breaks. In late winter every year, we burn the prairie to help manage the system and prevent trees from taking over. This area in particular is where I originally planted blueberries. You can see there's still one left here hanging on, but it's struggling really bad. And so I showed you what I was doing with blueberries this year. And so I have 2 aronia bushes. They're also very nutritious berries. And so there's one here as well as the other end. And then in the middle is American cranberry. These all can get quite large. But in the meantime, I'm going to have to put fencing around them like I do my others. They've been browsed heavily by the deer. Quite a few birdhouses. A few things starting to bloom. Got butterfly weed there. A few rudbeckia. You can see that yellow flower in the back there. Most of this is goldenrod. And in this little cutout, I have service berries and wild plums. And back here is the berry patch. I have blackberries here. They're small. These were all gifts from birds. I didn't buy any of these. I just transplanted them over here together. And this is my black raspberry patch, my prized possession. There's a little song sparrow up there. That's a black walnut. Black walnuts produce a chemical called juglone, which can inhibit the growth of other plants, but they play well with black raspberries, both natives in our area. These are sometimes called black caps because they sit on the receptacle like a little cap, and they're absolutely delicious. And I've got quite a few to pick today. Looks like I'll be making jam really soon. And the orchard's still young, but it's a part of a long-term food plan. Here I've got more service berries. There's a persimmon, and the other 2 were killed off by deer. I plan to put some more fruit trees back there. Mostly native, but I'll have peaches, cherries, and apples. And it all ties together, what I plant, what I preserve, and what I depend on for peace of mind. And if you're interested in a deeper dive into how I grow, cook, and preserve each crop, let me know below. I'm planning to create separate videos that follow them from seed to plate. These will be more detailed, step-by-step looks at each plant's journey through the season. Hey.
Nope, 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 nope. Those are my blueberries. Pinky Man, I love you.